Baruch, good evening. We're continuing with our Mishlei Yomi, one pasuk of Mishlei a day. We are in the fourth verse of the first chapter. Last week, in the third chapter, in the third verse, we learned what we said: Lakahat musar heskel, tzedek umishpat umesharim. That we are to accept wise discipline, righteousness, justice, misharim, fairness. Now it's the next category, as we're going to see the Mefarshim explain. The next pasuk says, Latet liftaim orma, to provide simple people. We'll soon see what liftaim are. Simple people with cleverness. We'll see also what that means. And lena'ar dat umzima, and to the youth, to provide them with knowledge as well as design. We're soon going to see exactly what that means. We're going to now dissect each word to see exactly what the pasuk is telling us. We're learning it with the Mefarshim. A peti, there's different interpretations. Is peti just a simple person? Is peti a person who just didn't learn yet? So this is the difference of the Rishonim. The Tosfot Arid, the Reed learns that a peti is a tam, he's just a simple person. However, Rabbeinu Yonah learns he's just someone who hasn't had the opportunity to learn. So very often, that's one of the same. Someone who hasn't had the opportunity to learn is someone who's more simple. If someone has acquired wisdom, then they have what to say. The Rinach Mias, which is one of the Rishonim that we're learning, has a different outlook. He says, we're not talking about a person who is completely vested in his sins. To go and give rebuke, or to go and teach wisdom to one who's completely invested in their sins, it's going to be talking to a wall. We're talking about someone who's struggling, who sometimes he beats the Yetzer Hara, sometimes the Yetzer Hara beats him. To such a person, that is a person who's called peti, and to that individual, when we bring him orma, cleverness, we know that Yaakov Avinu in this week's parasha, last week, this week, the week before, he's doing things which seem to be tricky, orma. However, the proper translation for orma is literally cleverness. Cleverness, wisdom. Sometimes, if someone is trying to pull a quick one on you, avoid it. If the Yetzer Hara is trying to act clever with you, play his game back on him. And that's what orma is. Orma's best translation would be to be clever, to be on your feet, to be wise in the decisions we make. And therefore, take this peti, take this individual who's struggling. He's not a full-out tzaddik, but he's not a full-out rasha at the other extreme, and give him help with the cleverness. Now, it's important to note that before we even continue, Rabbeinu Yonah tells us what we're talking about is if in the previous pasuk you've taken the chokhmah, you've taken the musar for yourself, that's the only way you can go and rebuke and teach others. Judaism does not believe in hypocrisy. You cannot go around and preach. Anybody can no preach, no teach until you have learned it yourself and you do it yourself. So Rabbeinu Yonah makes it very clear. He says, first a person has to learn the musar. He has to live the musar. The Rabbeinu Lashon is very, very, very clear. He says the Gemara, Keshot atzmecha ve'achar kach keshot acherim. First you dress yourself. First you learn it yourself, adorn yourself. And then you can go and impress those ideologies and those theories and that chokhmah that you've learned onto others. So who are the two greatest ones who can get this tochecha, as many of the Mefarshim are learning? Number one is a peti. Number two is a na'ar. A na'ar, there's also different interpretations. What's exactly a na'ar? Everyone will agree that it's for sure talking about a minor, a child. And we're going to explain exactly why as a child, but some say it's someone who just has not the opportunity to learn. He's not a bardat, he's a katan, he's a minor. However you want to learn it, what do we teach him? We teach him dat umzima. Dat is knowledge. Mizima is, as the Mefarshim explain, it's more of an outlook. It's more of grasping and containing one's thoughts. And therefore, the Chachamim, the Rishonim all explain, Shlomo HaMelech is telling us, you know who is the greatest two people that will take Musar? One who's simple. They have not already preconceptions, pre-notions on different ideologies and philosophies. Someone who just hasn't learned too much. Someone who's struggling and they're open to take a tochecha, to teach them something. We have a chiyuv to give rebuke, but we also have a chiyuv to make sure that it does not fall on ears which are going to not listen to them. Because if they don't listen to the rebuke, adarabah, you're making it worse for the individual. That's the petty. But the Nad, Rabbeinu Bechayeh, explains the greatest. He says that a child is the greatest person to give constructive rebuke. Obviously, I use the word constructive. We're not going to get too deep into that today. But obviously constructive. Why? He explains that a child, until the age of bar or bat mitzvah, they only have yetzer hara. Yetzer hara has, depending if it's a girl or a boy, no yetzer hara.
They only have?
That's how he says it. And then he gets his yetzer tov when he becomes a bar or bat mitzvah. So the yetzer hara has an advantage on each of us, he says. He either has, for girls, 12 years advantage. He's already made himself, when you have a new neighbor that moves onto the block. One who's been there for 10, 12, 13 years before, and the newcomer for almost evermore always feels like the new kid on the block. And this is exactly the battle between the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. Rabbeinu Bechayeh says that the Yetzer Tov is behind the Yetzer Hara by over a decade. And as long as a parent, a teacher, is constantly rebuking constructively, we're not going to speak exactly how, but constructively to the children to steer them on the right path while they're being completely controlled by their Yetzer Hara, when the Yetzer Tov comes in, it's going to be a lot easier for the Yetzer Tov to do its proper work. If you let the Yetzer Hara completely, Rabbeinu Bechayeh says, completely take care and do anything he wants to the child until he becomes a bar or bat mitzvah, then you're making it a lot harder for the child. The child's going to be way behind, chas v'shalom. And therefore, the greatest chiyuv. So Rabbeinu Yonah says, the petty and the nar, those two are the best people to do a tochecha to give a rebuke to. Rabbeinu Bechayeh goes further, he says the nar is much greater than the petty. He says help him do teshuvah while he's young, because when he's older, that's it. It's already become a hergel. It's become his habit, and it's very hard to break habit. We all know whether it's habit of 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, even more. Habit is the hardest. Habit is the hardest. But when we are able to already help and promote proper growth and character refinement from a young age, that is the greatest rebuke, constructive criticism, and putting on the path that we could ever do. So again, these first psukim of Mishlei are all an introduction. So the previous pasuk was telling us more for the wise people, where they're supposed to actually, and what they're going to gain from all of the mishalim, the anecdotes and parables in this book. Now it says it's even for those. How do you do it once you acquire it for yourself? Make sure to give it over to others. Who are your best customers? The petty and the nad. This is what Shlomo HaMelech is saying. Yes? You had a question? Yeah?